Alrighty, friends, it looks like it has happened again. Either you did it on purpose or you lost control of your finger and you hit the play button on yet another...
Kevin, another unmissable episode of V8 Radio.
Unmissable. There you go.
That is correct.
All right. Well, this is the unmissable V8 Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Oeste, joined as always by our esteemed co-host and co-worker, Mr. Mike Q-Ball Clarke.
Ooh, I just got a new title. How about that?
How about that? Well, we haven't really figured out your title anyway, so.
No, we haven't. It's all right. It's just the Q. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we say. Hey, somebody call the Q. Figure this out.
Right on.
Well, if you are new to the V8 Radio podcast, welcome aboard. We start off every episode with an automotive trivia question that probes the inner sanctum of automotive knowledge or not.
Ooh.
And
who doesn't like to be probed?
Yeah, in their inner sanctum. Have you, in fact, probed your inner sanctum to come up with a
yes? Let
trivia
me
question?
pull it out of my inner sanctum here and get it out.
All right. Well, before you do that, before you do that, I do have a shout out that we want to share. This was a really nice comment we got about the VA Radio podcast from our friend, Mr. John Gedhart. And John said, too bad I'm in the middle of binge listening all the episodes since the podcast started. So I'm still back in April of 2022. Hopefully I'll be caught up in the next few months. So I'll finally know the exciting news, which was the exciting news we released on episode 150. I listen in on my commute to work every morning. Love the show. Actually look forward to going to work now. Ha ha, he says. Actually, I like my job too. So I'm glad you like your job, but I'm happy that you dig the show, John. I appreciate it. Hopefully you'll hear this, after you get caught up on all the rest of them. But we always appreciate the positive feedback. There was another one right after him by a person named Ford Olay, who says, "This is the best automotive podcast out there," which is pretty strong. He's got best in capitals even.
Wow.
And he says he's been listening to this podcast for the last 4 years. I have since listened to each episode probably 3 times while at work and at home. Kevin and Mike are the best. So,
holy cow.
Thank you, Mr. Ford Olay and Mr. John Gedhart. We're both blushing. We appreciate it. And very, very kind words. And it's a pleasure to do this show. And it makes it even nicer knowing that there are people who actually enjoy listening to it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, that is great. Those are awesome words. Thank you, guys.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I had them blown up. They're on the wall of my garage studio here.
All right.
And I can just point to them and say, "See, I told you, somebody digs this.
I told you I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and people like me."
Let's not go crazy. All right, so back to the trivia question.
Yes, sir. Okay, so here we go. So Kevin and listeners, what car has the distinction of being the longest car to have been a unibody?
The longest car to have been a unibody. All right.
Yes.
So let's think here. Unibody or unit body construction means the chassis and the body are one. It's a monocoque, if you will, instead of a body on frame construction. And today, people associate unibodies with small cars, compacts, because they're generally lighter in that sense. So you don't have like a Honda Accord sitting on a full frame. The body shell itself is the chassis, which also makes them very strong. So, but there were some big uns made, and there's a couple that come to mind. I know the early 60s Lincoln Continentals were unibody. So like,
really?
1960 all through the Kennedy Lincoln, the suicide door cars, those were all unibody construction.
Get out of here. That's awesome.
Yep, as was the Thunderbird of the era. But bigger than that, I think, were some of the Chrysler products, which were also unibody construction. So I think the Imperials were in that time frame. But that's not the answer I'm going to provide.
Ooh, okay.
Yes. The answer I'm going to provide is a vehicle that I actually own. And I'm going to say it's the Dodge Maxivan, because my Dodge Maxivan has a long wheelbase and an even longer rear end, and it is a unit body construction.
Is
and
it really?
Yep, I think it's bigger than those Lincolns and those Imperials of the day. Yeah, there's no frame.
Huh, I did not know that.
It's just a big steel box going down the road. And if that doesn't make you nervous, according to the manual, mine's a Dodge B200, which means it's supposed to be a 3/4 ton payload van. There's no way. There's just no way.
Wow.
It is way too light of not that it's a light vehicle, but you think of like a 1/2 ton pickup truck or a 3/4 ton pickup truck. There are stacks of leaf springs and heavy chassis and an I-beam front axle and all that stuff. This is not.
Oh boy.
So, yeah. So I'm going to say the extended length Dodge van, just because, is my answer.
Okay, I love it. All right, duly noted, sir. Dodge
There you
Maxivan.
go. Yeah.
All right, so what do you got for me?
Find out. All right, along the lines of what is the biggest, up to date, and this I will preface this by saying this was something you could buy. What was the largest displacement V8 engine, and how many cubic inches did it displace?
Oh man! So for a passenger vehicle.
Yeah, we'll use that market segment. It's not a stationary. It's not a powering the crawler that Apollo.
Well, I want to make sure it wasn't part of
that.
That giant crankshaft we had the question of on our 150th episode.
Well, interestingly, I guess we'll find out. But anyway, what's your guess?
So what was the largest displacement engine you could buy?
V8.
V8. Okay. Large.
And I will caveat that by saying that this data was current up until a couple of years ago. I don't know if it still is. I think it still is.
Okay. That's a great question. All right. So immediately what comes to mind is the 500 cubic inch Cadillac V8.
Ooh.
Now, you just said it was something you could buy. So that could include crate motors of all shapes and sizes, not just engines available in production vehicles. So
I suppose it could.
Yeah. So let's see. Our friends at General Motors, Chevrolet in particular, are pretty good about putting out large displacement crate engines. You had a ZZ572. You had I think they have something out there over 600 cubic inch. So I'm going to say, for the sake of brevity here, I'm going to say
non-brevity.
It was Chevrolet, and it was a 632 cubic inch V8.
632 cubic inch Chevrolet V8, which very much so would be a crate you could buy today.
Yeah.
And,
so yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, that's a good one. Did you see that engine has received some new provenance?
I have not.
Just this week. Oh yeah, great topic. We've discussed this before. This is as we're recording this, it's the week of the 2023 Hot Rod Power Tour.
Correct.
And what was revealed on the Power Tour, but the latest iteration of Project X.
Ooh.
Which is now powered by a Chevy 632 crate V8. And no longer the electric
sir.
motor.
I did see that. That is great news.
It is great news. And longtime listeners will remember my story about working the SEMA reveal when Chevrolet decided to unveil that car on that stage for the first time in public with an electric motor. And I was looking at my rented tuxedo, hoping that I should have sprung for the one that was lined with Kevlar, because I was afraid I was going to get torched.
Yeah, they wanted to kill you.
Yeah, right. I had nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. People came up to me on the street. They came up to me online, and they're like, how could you do that? That's not a real car anymore. You killed Project X. And I'm like, guys, I just showed it off here because it was, a public reveal for the first time. But what was interesting about that is the spin I tried to put on that is that at least here in America, we had the freedom to build something like that as of that time period and still today, which is great. But I am happy that they turned that ship around and went back to an internal combustion engine, of course, a super bad 632 crate engine. So pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I was pretty happy. I just learned that yesterday, and I was cheering, to myself watching this video. Like, yes, it's back.
And what an animal that thing's going to be too.
Oh, for sure. I was listening to it. The video I saw of it was backing up into its space, and it just sounds very, very angry. It's crazy. I love it.
That's 1,000+ horsepower, I think.
Yeah.
It's just over 1,000, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty serious.
Yeah, it is very serious.
Another fun Power Tour story that is currently happening. You recall a few years ago when us at the V8 Speed and Resto shop had the distinct honor of reinvigorating, restoring, redoing the Comp Cams Camaro, the 1969 Camaro that's owned by Comp Cams.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite projects ever. The car is super cool. I first encountered that car on the Hot Rod Power Tour in 1998, I think. And it was used heavily as a promotional car for them, and it got kind of worn out, and it went to our shop where we completely stripped it and put we did some metal work on it and new interior and painted it and put a new rear suspension 4-link setup in it and a different subframe and a big inch LSX LS engine featuring all of the Comp family of products, fast fuel injection, and a TCI 6X 6-speed automatic, and lots of really cool stuff in that car. It ran hard, man. It drove really, really, really nice.
Right.
And they decided the car, our friends at Driven Racing Oil have the car in their possession along with Scooter Brothers, who was the original owner of the white 69 that helped start Comp Cams back in the 70s. Anyway, they decided to take the car on Power Tour, and it was built to cruise like that. It makes 640 horsepower, if I remember correctly, naturally aspirated. I mean, it's like a 450-inch big LS.
Yeah.
But it hasn't seen a lot of street action in the past 5 or 6 years since we delivered the car. It went to SEMA. It was on display there. It's been spied at a few of the local cruise nights near Memphis where those guys live. Beale Street, really cool stuff.
Yeah.
But they admittedly didn't really get a lot of time to drive this. So it departs from Memphis heading out to its first stop for the kickoff of the Power Tour the other night, and I get a phone call, and it's Sunday evening, and the name is not in my phone, but the area code sure is, and it's a 901 Memphis phone number, and I'm looking at this saying, yeah, this is probably spam. I'm probably going to ignore that, and it rings, and it rings again, and I'm looking at it, and it rings again, and I'm like, maybe I'll get this one, and it turns out to be my old friend Chris Brown, who was one of the first guys I ever met at Comp Cams a million years ago, and he is with the car and Scooter Brothers, and they are stuck on the side of the road with the Comp Camaro.
No.
Yeah, oh no is right. Yeah, and we all had a little chuckle about it because that's also the car that famously came loose in the trailer on the way to a Power Tour stop one year and rolled back and forth and smashed the nose and the tail over and over again in the trailer.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and our 62 Ford Galaxy, Kelly and I cruised on Power Tour next to that car, and we had all kinds of problems. So my Galaxy and that Camaro are no stranger to roadside excursions.
Roadside assistance. Yep.
For sure. They just had an alternator problem. The alternator was no longer charging, so they're like, what is this, and do you have any ideas? So it turns out it's a Wegner front drive. It's a great front serpentine drive system for those. Mm-hmm. But Wegner's documentation only says it's a late model GM 2-wire alternator. So it doesn't really say like '06 Silverado or something.
Oh, right.
So the comp guys, the driven guys went into action and dispatched a few people to AutoZone to try and find an alternator. And they said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, my advice is have them grab a couple of batteries and just put a battery in it and drive it to the next stop where you can not be on the side of the road trying to diagnose this thing." So they did that, and they eventually got a hold of, they went to Summit. There's a Summit Racing warehouse along the way in Georgia, I believe, and he said they tried on like 30 or 40 alternators and none of them fit.
Oh, wow.
I'm like,
geez.
oh, man. And I'm getting text updates now, throughout the day, and this extends into Monday, and today's Tuesday, and I'm still getting these updates. And I'm sharing them with the team because they, at the shop, because everybody's, holding their breath on this thing. Well, they got a hold of Wagner Motorsports, and he's like, "Oh, let me just beam you down a replacement alternator." So he overnights that thing as fast as he can. And they installed it today at John Kazi Motorsports. So
Ooh, no kidding.
Yes, and it's nice to have friends in those kinds of places. So they got a fun tour of Kazi's to see some of the engines and the boats and all kinds of stuff that he's working on. And then the alternator came in and they popped it in right away, and it was making 14.5 volts. And those guys are now back on the road and enjoying the rest of the power tour. So that's pretty cool.
Well, right on. And that's what it's all about. I mean, there's going to be breakdowns, but people help you out along the way, and that's the great community that the Power Tour is. That's why I love it so much.
Yes, and they're down in NASCAR country, so and those guys know a lot of people. So like Richard Childress Racing is like, we'll send a truck. I mean, all these people kind of went into action to help them out, and luckily that wasn't that big of a deal. It was just a little inconvenience of a part, and right. I'm hoping, I'm betting that the rest of their journey is going to be pretty smooth, because when we sent that car to them, it was pretty dialed. I mean, it was very reliable. It made all kinds of power. It steered and stopped really nicely. But then there's that X factor of not having put a bunch of miles on it, and that's where things start to get a little strange. But it's all good.
Yeah, that's pretty cool stuff, man. I wanted to go on this power tour, but
you got a job?
But I got a job I got to do, man. I can't just be running off like this.
That's right.
Crazy? You crazy?
So you've been now officially on staff for almost a month.
Almost a month, yeah. On the 15th, it'll be 1 month exactly.
So what do we think?
I gotta tell you, I'm digging this. Now, don't get me wrong. This is a real job. I mean, this is things are really happening here.
You were expecting something else?
No, not at all. But I mean, things already they get a little hectic. Things start moving fast, and when things need to happen, they need to happen. And I feel bad for poor Brian, the parts manager, having to have been doing this alone. Kevin, you should have hired me 1.5 years ago, for Pete's sake.
A couple of years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're right.
But,
and so Brian is the parts manager, and now you are on staff, working with him, finding parts and helping to build out projects. And as you can see, we definitely had the need for additional help in that department.
Definitely. So Brian is like, "Listen, hey, can I dump this on you? I gotta go take care of this other thing." I'm like, "Absolutely, let's have all of it. Whatever you need, let's have it." And I've been learning so much about just different car parts and different trim levels and different types of interiors and all kinds of things that I had no clue about before, especially cars that I just never really paid a lot of attention to in the past, and now I'm paying attention, and I'm learning quite a bit. And I really enjoy it. So
That's
there's a
pretty
lot
cool.
of information coming through, but I'm here for it. So
you're going to be the big trivia hero at the local cruise nights coming up,
right? Maybe the big trivia hero at V8 Radio. Hey,
yeah. Well, it doesn't hurt to dream. But you'll be able to point out the difference between a standard and a deluxe interior and a 67 Camaro from a whole parking lot away, you know?
Exactly. I'm like, oh, listen, that's a deluxe door panel. That's a standard seat. Oh, my God. What's this guy doing? Oh, boy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I do know that, again, one of my concerns was that you work remotely from the shop, and I didn't want you to feel like you were in a vacuum out there kind of by yourself.
Right.
But at the same time, this type of job, if you can have silence around you and focus, is going to make all the difference.
That is very, very helpful. One of the things that would hamstring me a little bit at my last place is, you get along so well with everybody you work around, and there's just a lot of chatter and a lot of things going on, and it's hard to focus when you really have to focus because it's just a kind of a calamity all day long. Mm-hmm. So, but being here by myself and being able to communicate when I need to, Brian or Trevor are just a phone call away or just a message away. And if I have any questions, they've been great about helping me out. But when I need to, to focus, I'm able to do so because, I don't have any music on and I'm just able to kind of just dig in and do what I got to do, which has been really, really helpful.
Yeah, you probably didn't realize how much noise was in your regular day.
Oh, it was amazing. It was unbelievable. Just the night and day difference at the noise level. It's crazy. Yeah. You're right. You get used to it. And then, and to be honest with you, the first couple of days here working out of my house took a little getting used to just because
it's probably kind of spooky.
It's just everything is completely different. And like, okay, all right, well, let's get used to this and figure out how I'm gonna make all this work for me, and I am, and everything is working great for me. So I'm starting to really, nestle in here in my little office here in the house, and really enjoying it.
Well, that's awesome, and I know that Brian and Trevor and the other people on the team have all commented that your contributions are definitely helping. Because you are easing that load off of Brian and also Trevor as a car comes in and the plan starts to come together for all the stuff that it's going to need. That was things that Trevor had to do, and he has a lot of other stuff going on. So now he kind of sends you that project, and you can dive in and do your thing, and same with Brian, and again still have that flexibility of. If something pops up like right now, which I think I did that to you today.
Yeah. Yes, you did, boss.
Yeah. Well, Chad, one of our technicians, was putting this 71 Oldsmobile convertible back together, and he's doing window regulators, and realized that we didn't have the 71 specific assembly manual for the Fisher body thing. For that car, we had the 71 Cutlass and 442 assembly manual, but that's different from Fisher body. And to get the proper diagrams for all the workings of inside the door, he's like, "Hey, do we have any pictures?" And I'm like, "Oh man, we don't have that." So I quickly sent you a message saying, "Hey, find one, get it."
Yeah,
and you got it quick.
Yeah, I was able to find it quick, which is nice. So I hope that helped him.
It did. So, I think so.
Right on. Look at
so
me
that's
already
really cool.
Being useful. Yeah,
how about that?
That is cool. How about that? Craziness, I tell you, crazy.
Yeah, well, it's really good, and again, it is helpful. So I'm glad that you're digging it, and I'm glad that you're able to get into the groove. A lot of people, when the whole work from home thing started during COVID, I think it was different because like everybody was in the same boat. And nobody really knew what to expect, and there was the pandemic, going on. But in this case, this is just a new environment that happens to be at home, and some people have a hard time getting into that mode of, I'm envisioning that, if you, in your case, if you step over the line into your office, it's work time, and you step out and it's your house,
Yeah, I definitely try to maintain some separation. And my neighbor and my buddy Robert, he's been working from home for 20-something years, and he gave me some really good advice where, just because, your quote-unquote office is right there, you need to end your work day.
Don't start drinking at 10 in the morning?
Yeah, right. You need to end your work day when your work day ends and not, keep going back and forth and pretty soon you're gonna get burned out on that. I said, that's good advice. So, and he mentioned that to me the first time we started working from home during the pandemic. That was a real culture shock because I hadn't experienced that before. So you almost get to the point where, well, my computer's right there. I can just hop on real quick. Yeah, it's 10 at night, but I just want to get this thing done real quick. And too much of that, and you start thinking like, oh my gosh, I never stop working. This is crazy.
Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah, actually, I got admonished by the boss lady a couple nights ago. Yeah, I was on the messaging system, and I put a message through and to somebody about a car, and it was late at night. It was like 10 o'clock. I'm like, oh, I just want to get this one thing done. And so, and Kelly messaged me. She's like, what are you doing work at 10 at night? Where is your family? I said, okay. I know where this is going. I said, okay, I'm done. She's like, goodbye. I said, okie dokie.
Yeah,
That's how that's going.
And she does that all the time, as you've seen. She'll sit up in the middle of the night and throw some notes in somewhere. And she claims it's just because she doesn't want to forget. It's just
right.
And I think that's a little different than sitting up all night and researching and actively working, as opposed to popping up going, oh man, I got to remember to do this tomorrow, and put that note in. But it's all how you manage it, because you don't want to be, and what I none of us certainly wanted was this to become work, and it's like, oh man, this sucks, So I'm glad that it's not, because you're doing a good job and we need your help.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely not. It doesn't feel like a quote unquote job. I mean, I'm getting paid to shop almost for car parts for people.
Yeah,
I'm spending other people's money. I love this. This is fantastic.
Yeah, well, you're helping people build the car they've always wanted, which is really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. So far, I'd say that the most difficult thing is to find those parts that don't exist so much. So where maybe you need a piece of a wiring harness, but it's only part of a bigger harness, and you just I don't need this whole harness. I just need this little bit of it, or I need this one part that's not reproduced. Let me scour eBay or other selling sites that. Or the support forums who might have it, or somebody who knows something about it. So those are the tasks that can really burn up some time and get you really thinking about stuff. But it makes you better, and
you're resourceful enough to be able to chase those things down. And again, I'll flip it back to considering Brian's day of having to focus on finding stuff like that. Meanwhile, people are coming to him all day long saying, hey, I need one of these like now.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, I can tell. I think he's said as much, that he's really appreciative that I'm able to take a lot off of his plate so far. And, I'm still, I'm super eager to do so and to learn more and do more and, be more of a presence. So I'm looking forward to, being even better. The only thing that really, it's kind of a downer, but you kind of helped me out with the other day, was not actually being at the shop. I mean, I can focus here and I can really dig in, but I really like seeing these cars and I really like hanging out with those people. But you took me on a little FaceTime tour around the shop the other day.
Yeah,
taking me to all the people, seeing all the projects, seeing what state they're in. And that was something different, too, because I'm looking at all these cars on a spreadsheet, but then I see them in their actual state of disassembly or build, and I'm like, oh, this is where we are with this. Like, that's crazy. I thought we were, in my mind's eye, I thought we were like, it was like almost all done, and I'm wrapping up these few things, but no, we're still in the heat of it. And so it was really neat to kind of get that connection again of based on where it is in the spreadsheet and to where it is in actuality.
Well, I'm glad that you got something out of that, because my mission again was to keep you connected to the action, and I'm kind of glad that your perspective was one that this car, according to the spreadsheet, feels like it's pretty close to being finished, even though in reality it's still, way before then, because that means we're doing a good job of getting ahead of the parts, right?
Right.
The last thing we want is to go, oh my gosh, that car's almost finished and I don't have half the stuff for it.
Yeah.
So ideally, the parts all kind of come first so that the team can just build and do their thing. So that's actually a good observation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, and it amazes me how quick these guys work too, because one of the cars in there, that 49 old sedan delivery, when I left from my onboarding, that was a whole complete vehicle. And then when you took me on our little FaceTime tour around the shop, that whole front end was gone off of that vehicle. I mean, it was completely blown apart.
Well, yeah, not only sheet metal engine, but it was just a pair of frame rails sticking out.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That would have taken me 3 months to figure out how to do everything there. And these guys just knocked it out in probably an afternoon.
Big parts of that came apart pretty quickly, which is good. And that, again, to see that progress is a good thing. And the other note is that the customers want to see that progress too. So we do our photo galleries and we're constantly taking pictures and uploading all the photos. And Joe, our sales and customer relations guy, he'll walk through and shoot individual videos for customers and keep them up to date also. But what's funny is being in the shop every day, the progress doesn't seem as dramatic because we're seeing the step by step. But like in your case, you step out for a week or so and then look back in and go, oh man, a lot's changed here. And, that's good to know also. And I don't know how I can relay that concept to some of the guys, and gals on the crew that are hands-on, very close to projects all the time. I think maybe what I need to do is we should probably just review last week's photos every once in a while and just say, guys, look how much you've done.
Yeah. Maybe. Speaking of photos, those photo galleries that are taken have been priceless for me.
Right on.
Because I'm so to paint the picture for our audience. We have a spreadsheet, and a lot of these parts on these cars are inventoried as to whether or not they can be reused, or whether they need to be replaced. Somebody may say door panel, and it needs to be replaced. So that can be a little bit vague, where I don't know what door panel it has currently. I don't know if it's again, if it's a standard interior, if it's a deluxe interior, if it had power window switches on it or whatever. So that photo gallery is typically, you're going to see a shot of the door open on the inside of the door panel, and then from that you can discern exactly what door panel I need to get and what pieces I need to get that attach to that door panel to be able to replace that whole door panel again. So those pictures I've learned are gold for trying to research some of this stuff.
Well, that is awesome to hear, because that was half the original intent of the photos. There's actually 3 halves, if you will.
Okay.
Well, the first half was for the customers to be able to follow along. The second half was for people who are cruising the internet and want to see our work. Here you go. But the third half of that is exactly what you're saying. And I think you are taking advantage of that like all the way, because a lot of times people can just go in the shop and just walk up to the car and look at it, or go out and to the parts warehouse and look at the part or whatever. But that's not always the most efficient way to do things. And we take photos of everything, and when every part that comes off the car is photo documented and put in the gallery. Also, so that when it comes time to put the car back together, a technician might say, "Hey, I need this," and our warehouse team needs to be able to know what that part is, especially if there is a question, if there's 2 or 3 or whatever, and can pull up the picture right away and go, "This one, yes, that's the one. Go get it." But I know that in the past, I've been guilty of trying to mentalize all of the required pieces for a particular task without thinking to look at the picture as a cheat sheet, as a guide of all the stuff that's required for that. So that's cool. I'm glad that that's working out there too.
Yeah, that's great because a door panel may have an emblem on it. It may have a separate armrest and a base and a pad, and then the hardware that attaches. A lower panel, maybe an upper panel. All kinds
escutcheon and a handle.
Escutcheons, yes. Doorknob escutcheons, yes.
Yes. And window crank escutcheons.
Yeah, window crank and little gaskets and the clips and all that. I mean, there could be 30 pieces just on one door panel. It's insane.
Yeah. And sometimes, again, the assembly manual concept will have a blown apart diagram sometimes, but a lot of these things have been photocopied 50 million times, and you can't really see it as well. And especially when you're trying to assess the condition of the one we have. Because, again, somebody might say, hey, replace this door panel. And that decision, may or may not be solid based on other factors like, well, can we get another one? Or is this do we have to restore this one? Or what's really wrong with this thing? Is it something that, so is however you can get a handle on the condition of everything is pretty critical when it comes to all this stuff. So. I'll invite the rest of the world to peruse our photo galleries because they're all public. And if you go to v8speedshop.com, right in the middle of the page, there's a button that says photos. Click that, and then a drop down comes up, and it's almost every car we've worked on. There's a bunch of them that are not there for whatever reason, but the years lay out from early to late. So I think the earliest one is 1923 maybe.
Yeah,
and then they go all the way up from there. And if you are working on a Chevelle or a Camaro or a Mustang or a Corvette or a Charger or, anything, any muscle car, second-gen Firebirds, Trans Ams, Monte Carlos, shoebox Chevys, fat fendered, 46 Fords. We have pictures
Dodge
of
Maxivan.
Dodge Maxivan, yes, square body pickup truck. We have pictures of all this stuff, and you're more than welcome to click through, and you'll see the thumbnail. You click the thumbnail, it blows up, and if you right-click on the blow-up picture and hit open in a new tab, it'll blow up even bigger, so you can get even closer to the action.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm happy to share that knowledge, and if people have questions, I'll just steer them to you.
Absolutely. I'm your guy.
Yeah, there you go.
You hear that, people?
That's it. Right on.
Just call the queue.
Yeah. Well, I know about this point of this show, we have people that are saying, 2 episodes ago, you promised us the van story in episode 151, which we did not do because we did our conglomerate episode with our friends at Stubborn German. And hopefully that was well received. I think so. I think that was a fun episode.
I think so. It was a heck of a lot of fun to do it.
From what you remember?
From what I remember, I thought it was great.
That was fun.
Oh, my goodness.
So then we said, okay, well, in
drunken Q.
Yeah, DRUNQ, I think is how you spell that.
Yes, sir.
So then we promised to share that story in 152, which is what this episode is. So the good thing is by going off on that initial tangent, we have to truncate this a little bit because this story, we tried to recap this, you and I and our friend Grady and Paul on another little trip that'll be probably the subject of 153. And
right
it took 3 hours.
Yeah, it took a long time to get it all out.
To get anywhere in the story.
Nobody could say, no, that didn't happen. This happened before that happened. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so we'll set the scene here. And it was, so I have this 79 Dodge Maxivan that I referenced in the beginning of the show. And there's another previous episode where you can hear the whole story of how that thing came to be. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But as of about a month ago or so, I had accumulated about 550 miles on this thing of local driving, highway driving, longest trip of about an hour, and figured this thing's pretty sorted out. Let's go on a road trip, right? Why not? What can happen?
What could possibly go wrong?
Speaking of road trips and being on the side of the road. So our buddy and I, Grady, jumped in the van on a Friday morning with the intent of going from the St. Louis metro area up to Chicago to see some friends, see yourself, some family members of mine, cousins, and go have a nice day checking out a baseball game from a bar. We've been doing this for years. And then stay the night, turn around, come back home, just do a quick little weekend. Well, it's actually going to be a 2-night thing. We're going to see some friends on one night, and then the next night see everybody for the game, and then come back on a Sunday.
Right.
And a solid plan, And the great thing about the van is that there's some room in the back, for tools and whatnot.
Yeah.
So Kelly threw some moving blankets in the van, which was a stroke of brilliance that I soon learned to appreciate. But we're heading north up, Illinois Interstate 55, and about an hour and 20 maybe north of where we started from, it felt like somebody just flipped an off switch and then turned it back on and turned it off and turned it on, because the van was stalling out, but rapid fire. So imagine taking a light switch and just flipping it on and off and on and off and on and off, but doing that with the ignition system. And that's what it would do. And then it recovered. And Grady and I look at each other like, what the hell? And it went away, and we kept driving. I knew something was up, obviously, but wasn't really sure what. So my mind is immediately thinking, ignition or fuel, one or the other. So you weren't on staff yet at that point, but I put a message out to parts guy Brian and said, hey, here I am on the map going north. Can you find the closest parts store that maybe has a coil, maybe a fuel pump, and see if there's anything in stock so I can do a quick parking lot fix of what I might need, right?
Right.
And, of course, Brian jumped on that in minutes, and he messages me back, and he's like, okay, well, 2 exits up the road, you have I think it was an O'Reilly's or an AutoZone, a big chain store that has the ignition coil. And by the way, there's 2 different kinds of coils for that thing, different tips on them for the coil wire, which I never knew on a Chrysler 360. And they're on the counter, they're paid for, ready to go. Just walk in and grab what you need. And then down the street the other way is another parts store that has the fuel pump, and that's paid for and done. Just walk in and grab it, and you're good to go. So I'm like, awesome,
Yeah.
So we get there and pull the doghouse off of the van to reveal the engine, and we notice right away that Grady pulls the coil wire off the old coil, and it basically just falls off. It was like not seated on the coil, right? And
there you go.
Learning about this new 2 different type of connector scenario, we deduced that the van had the wrong coil wire for the coil that it had, and maybe it was flapping in the breeze going down the road and killing the spark and stumbling the van.
Right.
Great. So we switched the coil for a new one that had the correct connector on it and put it all back together and fired up and go down the road, and we're golden, for 15 minutes. Yeah. And this continued to happen to where we would drive, it would start to stumble, we would stop, we would evaluate, we would try to fix, we'd start it up, it would drive again, and then it would stumble, and the cycle would repeat. But the time between stumbles was getting shorter. So it went from 25 minutes to 20 minutes to 15 minutes to, at the very end of the night, we had about 12 seconds of runtime before it stalled. Because it went from stuttering to completely dying. And along the way, just to hit some of the high points of what we did, I'm thinking there's junk in the fuel filter, even though we just put one on, changed the fuel filter. I noticed that the fuel filter hose, the rubber hose around it was soft, so it was perhaps collapsing, so we changed that out. I took the top half of the carburetor apart at this rural parts store parking lot. They did not have any parts for it, and we were still 2 hours out of Chicago if we were on the interstate. And I remember talking to the parts guy saying, hey, can you get me a carb kit for this thing? Oh, yeah, it's in Chicago. It'll be here in 2 days. Can you get me a carb? I'll just change it. Yeah, that's in Chicago. It'll be here in 3 days. So,
Gee whiz.
over and over again, we had to make the decision of, for the situation, what's the best thing to do here? And I wanted to completely disassemble the carburetor and clean it all out and put it back together. And Grady's like, if you drop something in the parking lot here and on the rocks, we'll never find it, and we can't.
Yeah.
Then we can't go anywhere. Then we're stuck.
Then we're going to have to wait those 3 days to get that carburetor.
For sure. Which, at the same time, we did have a cooler full of drinks in the back, and, it's got a couch and everything. We thought, we just sleep in this thing if it comes down to it, we just take a vacation in a field and wait. But when this first started happening, Grady's like, hey, it almost seems like, something's getting stuck in the fuel line or the pickup is jammed or whatever. And my mind immediately went to, well, what can we fix? Right? Maybe not what's actually wrong with this thing, but what can we fix as we're on the road? So I didn't doubt that might have been an opportunity to be happening, but it didn't point to it because the van's got a plastic fuel tank. Mm-hmm. So I kind of ruled out it being full of rust and crust because this plastic tank, it's in perfect shape. I doubt that that's what it is. Plus, we changed out a bunch of the fuel lines and the filter. Plus, at one point, we finally, make it up to Chicago, and we're at that point where the thing's going to run. It runs for 30 seconds, and then you got to shut it off for 5 minutes, and then start it up, and then rev it up, and throw it in gear, and get as far as you can in 30 seconds, and then it dies, and you coast down. And we're in that scenario, and at one point, we pulled the fuel line off the carburetor and cranked the engine, and it was still producing fuel. It wasn't like a spray, but it was, in my opinion, clearly enough to run the thing. Mm-hmm. And some of the roadside fixes, we ended up bypassing the fuel system with an electric fuel pump, and that didn't matter. It still did the same thing, and we put a distributor in it. We met some really nice people at the 24-hour AutoZone on Toohey Avenue in Chicago. It's kind of the hub store for people in that area, and these folks just were like, what do you need? Let's just help you out. And it was great. We bought an ignition module. These Chryslers are known for the module getting hot or failing, and the balance resistor. We're replacing all the stuff that would point to this exact symptom.
Right. And it's important to note that you had put about 400 or so miles on this van already, and you had done a lot of repairs to it to make it roadworthy to get ready for this trip. So this wasn't just something you went into, willy-nilly and just threw caution to the wind. You were prepared for this.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I said, I think about 550 miles were on it. And I owned the thing from September to April, so there was time. And in that time period, we did the brakes and put wheels and tires on it and did, tune-ups, and I had replaced the carburetor that was new, and, all the bulbs and electric little nonsense. So it was pretty solid, but it's thrown us this curveball to where it runs and then it dies, and it runs and it dies. And we basically missed our big event on Saturday because we were dicking around trying to get this thing to run. And at that point, the mission shifted from going up for a weekend with our friends to, we need to just get this thing home somehow.
Right.
And the funny thing was, it would die. And thankfully these Dodge products of the era had a gear reduction starter. So it's easier for the starter to spin the engine over than a traditional standard drive starter, which made it possible for us to crank this thing over probably 1,000 times over those couple days, trying to restart it and keep it alive. And the worst part of it was, it was a little bit of a novelty and a little bit of road trip adventure, and thankfully, my traveling companion, it was of the mindset that it didn't matter. We didn't have anywhere to be. It's okay. Let's just figure it out, So there are people that would have gone out of their mind and said, just flatbed this thing home and be done with it.
Right.
And we both had kind of the spirit of adventure to try and, I'm kind of pig-headed that way. I want to fix it, I want to figure it out. And he was cool with that, which was good. But at one point where it was late, it was like, I don't know, 1 a.m, Friday night. We actually made it to my buddy's house about 10:30 p.m., stayed there, saw some friends, jumped back on the road to go, I don't know, 15 miles or so to where our hotel was, and it took us like 3.5 hours to get there.
Oof.
In the middle of the night in Chicago. And at one point we were on an expressway where there's a merge, an on-ramp coming on, and there's 3 lanes of straight traffic, and we're in the rightmost lane, right where these things converge, and it's the middle of the night. There's people winging past us at 80, 90 miles an hour, and we're just on the other side of a hill. So we were this giant surprise if somebody's coming along, and it's late at night on Friday night. Who knows if these people are impaired behind the wheel, coming over a hill, and it's seeing this van that's not moving, and the hazards are barely flashing because we're almost out of battery power. That's the point where we looked at each other and said, this is where we die, by the way.
This is how it ends. So, all right.
This is going to be it. And we, as morbid as it sounds, kind of prepared for it because it has lap belts, like airplane style seat belts.
Yeah.
And these captain's chairs from 1979. And we were debating, it's like, are we going to be in worse shape if we wear these seat belts and get hit in the back at 70, 80 miles an hour, or if we don't wear the seat belt and not risk having our spine separated when we get hit?
Oh, jeez.
These were the conversations that we were having. So thankfully that didn't happen. But it took all of our brain power to run these scenarios of what's going on in this stupid van, in this system. And so the shift then became just get it home. Maybe not fix it, just get it home. And not tow it home, but what can we, just kind of temporary rig. And Grady had pointed out that we could run this thing and keep it alive by spraying carb cleaner down the carburetor.
Okay.
So that was pivotal because then we knew we had spark, we knew we had ignition, we had a fuel problem. And even though we could see fuel and whatever, that was the problem. So we took that electric pump that we had bought and a big section of hose and really just kind of got down and dirty with it and left the doghouse off and took a gallon jug of gasoline and our fire extinguisher, which we had, and ran a hose with our electric pump right into the gas can, right into the carburetor inlet, and put a toggle switch under the hood and started the thing up, and it ran. It stayed alive.
Hey.
So, yes. So we didn't fix it, but we made it functional again.
Yeah.
And then to drive the thing 300 miles home, 350 miles, whatever. We did the math. We went to another AutoZone and bought all of their 5-gallon gas cans and then a 1-gallon and said, well, we're just going to rotate these suckers out. We'll keep a 5-gallon full and then another 5-gallon full and then a 1-gallon spare for reserve because that's going to get us, I don't know, 10 miles, maybe 8 miles.
Right.
And the fuel gauge became lifting up the can and seeing how light it's getting.
Got about 40 miles left.
Well, I mean, honestly, that's what we were doing. And we started driving this thing. And today, you can't buy a gas can that's got any kind of a nozzle on it that is usable by humans because they've got all these goofy safety things and environmental BS on them. So we determined that we could cut that in half and release the locking mechanism, and it was a snug fit for our fuel hose. So
that's great.
It worked out nice. And if we wanted to, we could have wrapped it with tape or something on top of that. Turns out we didn't really have to. We could just shove it down in there. And we went through the first few gallons, and we're like, hey, we did not articulate it. We weren't going to say, hey, it's working, because that's when it would have failed. But we
exactly.
kind of nodded to each other like, I think we might be able to do this. And we're going down the road, and it was at this point that Grady said, yeah, okay, I think I'm going to cancel my flight then. And I went, what? And he's like, yeah, I found the last flight out of Chicago, and I bought myself a ticket. I didn't get you one because I didn't have one. but don't worry, I'm going to cancel and stay with you, And it was kind of a running joke. He canceled his plane ticket. He also canceled his rental car. And the
all
train,
for you, buddy.
I know. Well, because we had a glimmer of hope finally.
Right.
And realistically, he had to be back to go to work, So
Sure.
we went to your house, which was on the way home.
Yeah.
And that was kind of proof of concept. We made it there. And at that point, we decided to button this thing up a little bit, put the doghouse back on it. You made us a nice little shim that would lift that doghouse up so we could feed the fuel hose from the gas can underneath and feed the engine. And from there on, man, we just rotated fuel cans and made it all the way home without a hitch.
That is perseverance, if I've ever heard it. That is fantastic.
It was perseverance, determination. Again, to me, it wasn't that stressful. It was really the challenge of doing it all. And I was kind of pissed, because I'm like, I got this great idea. Maybe it's this. And let's do it. And we put it all together and it dies again. And it's like, damn it. I was more mad at the thing than anything else. Mad at myself that I couldn't figure it out and just, I guess, determined to figure it out. So got it home, parked it for a few days, didn't really look at it, and then got some time to do further diagnosis. And I really, was thinking it's got to be something fuel related. So it turns out that we were unable to pull fuel from the tank.
Right. Yeah. Grady had the ball bearing theory going on, right?
Yeah, like something was blocking up that fuel line. And even though at one point we saw that fuel was coming into the carburetor, what was happening is that the fuel pump would create its vacuum and suck fuel up, which would tighten something into the fuel line, into the pickup, and restrict, and that's what would shut it off. And then you'd shut the van off for a few minutes, and that vacuum suction would release, and then you'd start it up again, and it was able to pull some fuel in until it bound. And I learned this by taking the fuel tank down. So I put the van on a lift, and I crawled underneath there, and I took the straps off to remove the plastic tank, and I take the hoses and the filler neck and all that stuff out. And I can't get the tank down. I'm looking at this thing going, why isn't this falling on me? And of course, at the whole trip, we had just put like 30 gallons of fuel in this thing.
Fantastic.
So I had to siphon pump all of that out and then drop this tank. Well, after looking at this thing every way possible and taking my phone and sticking it up there and trying to take pictures of on top of the tank and looking at the manual and online and all this stuff, it turns out that I just said, well, screw it. I'm just going to rip this thing down. Maybe it's just kind of time welded, to the bottom of the van. And I rip it down, and it turns out that whoever did the custom van conversion back in 79 drilled wood screws through the floor into the top of the tank when they were putting the carpeting
bless America.
in. So, just like a cheap apartment, it's got a subfloor. So you got your steel van floor, and then they screwed, some plywood down before they put their 4 inches of plush shag carpeting. And when they put the ply down, it drilled right through the fuel tank and was holding it to the bottom of the van. And luckily, it was doing that because the screws closed up all the holes that they put in the tank. Otherwise, this thing would have been a vapor bomb, just waiting to go off.
Yeah, not a lot of engineering going on at our friends at Goshen, Indiana, is there?
Yeah, Concept Engineering. Yeah. They were conceptualizing something. Yeah. So I cut all those screws flush and filled all the holes in the tank with some JB epoxy and took the fuel sender out and found out that true to his theory, the sock filter on the intake part of the tube was deteriorated, and there was gunk just clogged up inside the fuel pickup, and gunk that would bind under vacuum and release a little bit under no vacuum, and that was the on-off effect of the fuel supply.
It is really bizarre that it took so many miles for that to manifest itself. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, why didn't it do it right away? Why didn't it behave that way? Maybe it just wasn't deteriorated enough to do that.
And that part I'm actually used to also, because this is what happens whenever we finish a car. You finish a restoration or you build a car or even do a big upgrade on something. it might take a little while for something to shake loose or something to fail, even though it's new.
Yeah.
So it didn't surprise me. And I replayed this whole scenario in my mind a million times. And I stand by the decisions I made because, again, I don't know if you've ever heard that joke of the guy who he's on a street corner at night under a street light, and he's looking at the ground. And this guy comes up to him and says, "What's going on?" And he goes, "I lost my watch." And he said, "Oh, well, where'd you lose it? Somewhere here in the corner?" And he goes, "Well, no, I lost it on the next block, but the light's better here." So, and that's what I was doing. I was looking at things that I could fix on the road, that were minimal risk, as opposed to finding what was actually wrong with it, because I couldn't take a 30-gallon fuel tank down on the side of the road. It just wasn't going to happen.
Right, exactly.
So fix everything else, But every one of the things that we took care of was, either bound to fail anyway or had a little something to do with it. But
yeah, you had a lot of little things that were contributing to a bigger problem. And you really got a lot of those things knocked out, which is great because they would have been bigger issues down the road. And I think you were telling me when you got home, you did pull that carburetor apart and you found like a bleed tube or an idle tube that was blocked, right?
Yeah, and it was a new reman carburetor,
right?
That had only been on there for now, 1,000 miles or so, 1,500 miles, and it was having trouble idling. It was stumble off idle, and when I took the whole thing apart, I found that there's an air bleed tube that goes down, and it's got tiny holes perforated in it for the air to flow through, and little fuel nozzle, and it was jammed solid with like calcium,
Oh wow!
So it was plugged, and that made it through the remanufacturing process. I'm convinced that plugged tube was there before they remanufactured it, and it remained plugged through the process. And then I put it on the van, and it was still plugged. So once I cleaned that out with this little needle and a little file and some carb cleaner and whatnot, it idles a million times better. And that little part throttle stumble is gone.
That's
so
great.
It was good to go through all that, but
sure,
it was an AdVANture for sure.
The adventure of a lifetime, everybody.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was
man. That is crazy.
Yeah, and not as nuts as 20 some years ago when we had to put an engine in the Galaxy overnight and on Power Tour and all that kind of stuff. There's road warrior stories that are far more road warrior than this. But the difference on this one is that neither one of us were really upset by it. In fact, at the end of the trip, I'm like, "Hey, dude, I'm sorry. This was kind of a bus wreck." And he's like, "Well, no. I mean, I enjoyed it." And I said, "Well, I did too. I just, I didn't want your weekend vacation to be this." And he's like, "No, I thought it was cool. We problem solved and we tried stuff, and there was that." One of the greatest stories ever told is the one where they can't get home. We were like Apollo 13.
Yeah, right. Your own personal Apollo 13 mission. Oh, that's great.
We had to make the square fuel pump fit in the round hole to scrub the oxygen.
You had a successful failure. That's great.
We did. We had a successful failure. How about that?
Yeah. How about that? Congratulations.
Yeah. So the good thing is, got it home, got it fixed, drove it around, and comfortable with it enough to where Kelly actually got in it again, and she's like, "All right, well, let's take this." So,
all right, good stuff.
That's all good. Yeah. So that was the very short version of the AdVANture.
Yeah, that is an impressive van, up close and personal. There's a
that was
lot
the first time
going
you saw
on
it.
there. Yeah, it is. First time I saw it.
Well, and it was so funny because, again, we're limping this thing around the city streets of Chicago trying to get to parts stores and whatnot. And on the spare tire cover I had made, and it has an old style beer logo on it, which was a straight up tribute to my dad. He used to drink Old Style like crazy. And I had the spare tire cover made, and people this whole adventure, we didn't get stopped by a single cop or a single person on the side of the road. Everybody just would see the van on the side of the road, and then they just get this big smile on their face, like, oh, yeah, check that out. And then they go on their merry way. They didn't realize that we were stranded. We couldn't move or whatever. And that van has that effect on people. People just really, they get a smile out of it. It's just something you don't see every day. It's a big goofy thing. But later on, I'm in a Facebook group of old-style beer aficionados, if you will.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the lead image is my van going through an intersection in Chicago that some guy took the photograph from a tow truck and posted it on Facebook going, hey, check this out. Look at this guy's got old style on his van.
That is unbelievable when I saw that.
Yeah.
That just
and then
really made my day.
Somebody saw it and sent it to me. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, because I didn't know that happened.
Right.
Because quite honestly, if I knew that tow truck was there, I probably would have hitched a ride with him,
Yeah. Hey, buddy, can you hook me up?
For sure, literally.
Yeah.
But
for sure.
Who knows? So that was a lot of fun, though.
Yeah, man. I'm glad you guys still made it up. I mean, you did end up getting to hang out for a little bit, which was great. I know it took forever, and I know that it was quite an ordeal, but we're glad you made it and got to have some fun and kind of decompress a little bit from it. So good stuff.
You were fully decompressed, I think, by the time we met
I
up
was
with the guys.
1,000% decompressed, as a matter of fact.
Because you had just, is that when, like the day you resigned from your previous gig, I think?
It was
right
about the time, yeah.
So we did take a few minutes and meet you guys at a bar down the street from where the hotel was. Got there probably 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. And, the queue was DRUNQ.
If I was drinking old style, I would have been fully croissant.
That's right. And naturally carbonated.
Exactly.
Too funny.
Yeah,
so the good thing
time.
is also, Grady and I are still buddies after all that.
Right on.
And a couple weeks after Memorial Day weekend, we took another road trip. And that'll be a story for another time. But you took the GTO. And our buddy Paul took his 62 Buick, and you guys came south from the Chicago area. Grady jumped behind the wheel of his 72 Bronco that we did a Coyote swap on, and I drove our 62 Ford Galaxy north. And we all met in the middle of the state in the town of Normal, Illinois, where I went to college. Paul went to college. Your daughter goes to school there.
Yep.
And we had a day, and it was cool. It was fun.
It was a really cool day. I was really happy that we're all able to get out and hang out and get together and do that. We got to do that more often.
Yes, the mission is to drive the cars more and really just enjoy the day. Because I used to think people were being hokey when they're like, oh yeah, stress relief, man. I just get behind the wheel, or I ride my Harley and the world goes away. But you know what? It does. So do it.
Amen.
I recently found a photograph of the odometer of my Galaxy that was taken in 2013, so 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And looking at the mileage, it turns out that I've averaged 880 miles a year in that car for the past 10 years.
That's cool, man.
It needs to be a lot more than that.
Well, yeah, but it's good that you're getting miles on it.
Yes. Every chance I get, I try to drive that thing.
Yeah, same here. I just took the GTO to a car show on this past Saturday. Our high school had their band boosters put on a car show, their first car show ever, and it was a quarter mile away from my house. It was the best location ever, and there's about 50 cars there, and some really unique stuff. I mean, it wasn't just a muscle car show; it was all makes and models. So there was a 92 Celica with Lambo doors there. There was some Boy Racer STI. There was a 54 Packard.
Nice.
Some really cool stuff. A 70 GS Stage 1 was there. I sent you a picture
you took pictures of that one. Yeah, that was a cool car. I think that was a 71.
Yeah, 71 rather. Yeah.
Gold. Beautiful car.
But yeah, a lot of really cool cars showed up there, so I was pretty happy. And the band boosters were super happy because they were pretty nervous. Like, well, we never done anything like this before, and it was all just, it was $20 to register, and there wasn't like a ton of trophies. The band director gave out a most unique trophy award,
Nice.
and he picked that '92 Celica with Lambo doors. So
It was unique.
It was pretty unique. But it was just to get together and just to support the band and see cool cars, and it was a great success. So I think it's going to get even bigger next year. So
Awesome.
My wife is part of that committee, and she was really happy that.
That's how you got your trophy.
I didn't get a trophy. I did win through a Milwaukee drill through one of the door prizes, which was fun.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Hey, heck yeah.
So.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, so they did all right.
Awesome.
They, made a few bucks on the entry fee, on the registration fee. Some sponsors gave some money. Other sponsors gave, water and food and prizes. So it was a nice little deal.
There you go, man. Love that.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, that I'm also planning on when I come back down to the shop at the end of June. I want to take the GTO down with.
Awesome.
So, so that'll be a fun drive.
Yeah, you've made that drive before. Should be no problem.
Should let's not say that too loudly.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be cool. I do also want to do some more road trips up that way too. Maybe next time we'll take the Riv. Brought the van, took the Galaxy out. Maybe I'll take the Riv next time. We'll see.
Dig it. All right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know that our two listeners that used to like us anyway are waiting for the trivia question answers. They're like, enough of this drivel. What are the answers?
All right. So I asked you, Kevin, what car has the distinction of being the longest car to have ever been constructed with unibody construction? And you said, well, the 60 Lincolns were pretty long, and they were unibody, the Kennedy Lincoln and Chrysler Imperials. But you landed on the Dodge Maxivan as being the longest car. And you touched on that Imperial, and I thought you were going to land there. Because while the Maxivan has an overall length of 234.5 inches, the 1973 Chrysler Imperial clocked in at 235.3 inches.
That last inch.
The 5 mile per hour bumpers mandated in 73 is what gave it the extra length.
So I sniffed around it.
You did.
But I'll tell you what, that was not including the old style spare tire cover.
No, well, you know what?
That,
was that
Imperial.
factory, sir? Was that factory?
The tire was, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Actually, the spare was an original tire to the van. It's like never been on the ground.
Oh,
Goodyear power cushion or something. Man. Well, cool. At least I was on the right track, and sometimes
you were
it's
right
good
there.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll call
73, though. I'm impressed that it was that late, because I was thinking
I
of the
was
60s
too,
cars.
to be honest with you, yeah.
But they did get big.
But what's funny
All right,
what's funny is the 59 Lincoln is the longest wheelbase at 131 inches, but the Imperial is actually overall length is longer with 127 inch. I thought that was a pretty interesting stat.
That is. Big cars.
So,
Gotta love them.
yeah, man. Sorry, continue.
All right, so my question to you is, what was the biggest V8 that you could buy? And you said, does this go with the giant crankshaft question from before? Which the fact it was a V8, I think, ruled that out, because that giant crank, I believe, was for a straight engine. Then you said, how about the 500-inch Cadillac V8? And then you said, well, Chevrolet had a Crate 572, maybe something bigger than 600. And you said, I know what it is. It's the 632 cubic inch Chevrolet V8 that came out, I don't know, a year and a half ago, maybe?
Yeah.
2 years,
like that.
probably by now. And we commented that is currently found in Project X. And that's certainly a giant displacement V8, but it is not the biggest.
But not the giant displacement V8.
No, the giant one is a Sonny Leonard engine known as the Godfather Big Block, and it's 1,005.8 cubic inches.
Wow.
And it's big block Chevy pattern. It's a race engine. It's I don't think it's pro stock, but it's a full race engine built by Sonny. He passed a couple of years ago, but Sonny's racing engines is still out there, probably still making them. The mountain motors with the giant cylinder heads, and it's all billet, custom.
Yeah.
Probably $150,000 engine, but to date, I think that is the largest V8 for a passenger car at 1,005.8 cubic inches.
Wow, that thing's got to be.
It's a big one.
Just the outer dimensions have to be immense.
Yeah, they're huge, for sure.
Wow, that's
so there you go.
Crazy.
Well, good question
I
on
was
that.
onto something.
That longest unibody. It's a great question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right, man.
That was one of my own questions too. By the way, I'll have you know that was not a ChatGTP inspired question.
That was not AI. That was actual intelligence. AI.
That was actual intelligence, sir.
It wasn't fed by Trevor or Brian or any of your other coworkers.
No one fed it to me in this one.
Wasn't Yardley texting you that one?
No, I don't think so.
Man, you got a network.
Yeah, I got resources, man. Well, we got to keep up with you. Good heavens.
Yeah.
You're ridiculous with your knowledge sometimes.
Well, I am pretty ridiculous. I'll give you that. This time, I had the idea for the question, but I honestly didn't know the answer, so I had to look it up what it was. But I thought that'd be a good. Sometimes that's how I roll. I just be like, well, that would be interesting. And I'll tell you, I did have a different question that I could not find an answer to. And really? I did not torture you with that, but I will share what that is. And that was a two-parter. You're going to know the first part, but not the second. And the first part is, what was the Iron Duke, and how did it get its name?
Iron Duke was the Pontiac 151 cubic inch 4-cylinder engine.
Yes.
Iron block, iron head. How did it get its name? That I don't know.
Nobody does, apparently.
Yeah.
The closest thing I found was that some internal engineers just started calling it Iron Duke. They just started calling it Duke, and it stuck. But interestingly, the research on that engine, it's like one of the only production engines in history that was designed not to be a good performer.
Yeah, that's about right.
It was designed to be low internal friction, long lasting, not make power. Just move the car down the road and stay together.
Just get from A to B.
Yeah, right. Repeatedly.
Just be the appliance.
That's it. So, a very grandiose name for an appliance engine, by the way, Iron Duke.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So that's the trivia question that never was. But
take it.
There you go. All right, my man. Well, this was fun. It was good to share that story. I hope it wasn't a letdown, keeping people on the hook for a couple episodes. There are certainly a lot more stories to come if you dug this show. I will do a quick little plug. Again, you heard the Stubborn German V8 Crosscast. The Stubborn German podcast on its own is also pretty fun to listen to. But this past week, we also released a Bonneville Up to Speed podcast with special guest Danny Thompson, of course, son of Mickey Thompson, and land speed record holder as the fastest piston-powered, wheel-driven streamliner up in the 430 mile per hour range for a while with Challenger 2 until he got surpassed by our friends George Poteet and that team. But Danny was just an awesome guest. Great stories, tons of history, very enthusiastic. He's in his early 70s, and he's still out doing it. So I would recommend checking out the Bonneville Up to Speed podcast. BonnevillePodcast.com, you'll find it. And that's a good one. So check that out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Right on.
Well, that's all I got, my friend.
That is all I got. I got work to do, man. Woo! The boss is a slave driver.
Yeah. I'll see you tomorrow at work.
I'll see you on the morning call. Okay.
That's it. And I don't know. We'll see all the rest of you somewhere down the line. Thanks for listening to this episode of V8 Radio. And remember, if you think it's plugged, it is.
Oh,